Hi, this is Randy Wyckoff, the Dean of the College of Public Health at East Tennessee State University. And I want to step away from COVID-19 for a moment and talk about the social unrest that's happening in our country and propose a public health approach. I think we're all deeply, deeply upset with what's going on. We've seen significant injustice. We see demands for justice. We see protests. All of that is entirely appropriate. And it's a tragic situation, what happened, but perhaps what makes it even more tragic is that it isn't the first time this has happened. It keeps happening over and over again. We have situations that arise. We demand justice. We express our anger. And all of that is fine and appropriate, but then it happens again and again. And when that happens, when something happens over and over, you realize that you're not effective at addressing the issue. And so I want to propose a public health approach by asking a simple question. What are the upstream factors that may be leading to the situations that we find ourselves in? And from my perspective, underlying almost everything we see is rampant poverty and dramatic socioeconomic inequality, and a system that is progressively consolidating wealth in a few hands with a widening gap between rich and poor. In 1967, the economic gap between rich and poor was about 11-1. This is looking at the richest fifth of Americans versus the poorest fifth, not the very wealthy, not the very poor, the top 20% versus the bottom 20%. Over the last 50 years, it has widened considerably, and in fact, has widened by 55%. So a growing gap between rich and poor. Now, this wouldn't matter so much if folks who were born poor could become rich and vice versa. But if you look at how people end up, if you're born to parents in the bottom fifth, 43% chance that you'll end up in the bottom fifth, and only a 4% chance that you'll end up in the top fifth. So if you're born poor, it's 10 times more likely that you'll stay poor for your entire life. Conversely, if you're born to parents in the top fifth, 40% of them will end up in the top fifth, and only 8% will end up in the bottom fifth. So 5 times more likely that you'll stay rich if you're born rich. So and now in the world today, it's been reported that the top 26 billionaires around the world, this isn't just the US, own as much wealth as half of the world's population. So this is creating some tension. These tensions are made worse by the fact that this economic inequality is superimposed on racial inequality. We see racial inequality in our country related to poverty, where African Americans are more than twice as likely to be poor. They're 50% more likely to be unemployed. They're a third more likely to lack advanced education, and they're many times more likely to be in the criminal justice system. So those two things combined result in a growing sense of disenfranchisement by African Americans and other marginalized citizens in our country. I think these are made worse by lack of calm, firm leadership voices calling for the end to hatred and real change in our system. And here I'm not just talking about political leaders, I'm talking about all of us. We're all leaders in our own fields, in our own communities, and we have to start speaking up and saying some of these issues are wrong. It's also exacerbated by an adversarial mentality that now exists with armed citizens, creating, frankly, a dangerous situation for police and for citizens. It's very tense, it's dangerous, and it's frightening. It's also exacerbated by the fact that we have come to believe that the way to control crime in our country is to lock them up and throw away the key, and especially to treat drugs as a crime and not a mental health disorder, such that we've seen a dramatic rise in the number of people who are incarcerated in America. And as I pointed out before, that's disproportionately representing African Americans and poor whites as well. And as you all know, if you're incarcerated, then your chance of getting a good job goes down dramatically. And I think another factor that's making things worse is that we now have social media that permits anonymous hate speech, both real and manufactured. And I am becoming increasingly concerned about the extent to which we are being, our communication is being controlled by outside folks. As I pointed out before, 45% of social media posts on COVID-19 may be from bots. All of this results in real, legitimate distrust, alienation, and anger. And while it's the anger that we see, the protests and the demand for change and the demand for justice, those are all very legitimate. But we have to understand that underlying that is significant racial inequality and dramatic and long-standing poverty. And if we want to stop these kind of issues from happening, we have to be able to deal with both of those. Again, that's just my opinion. I understand that I may be wrong. If you have thoughts on this or other issues, please let me know. I'd be happy to try to answer your thoughts and questions. Thank you very much.